This is NDTV, and you're watching Classics.
Pakistan these past few days seems to have been flooded with all sorts of visitors from India, from LK Advani to the All-Party Hurriyat Conference. Many believe that this is a crucial, critical and precarious juncture in the peace process, even though leaders on both sides now say that the peace process is irreversible. New Delhi, of course, is watching with some trepidation the visit by Kashmiri separatists to Pakistan. Very crucial talks on the oil pipeline are underway, and the last two rounds of talks on the Siachen glacier and Sir Creek have not produced any visible results. So joining us now to take us through the weeks and months and the years to come, Pakistan's Foreign Minister, the very well-known Foreign Minister, Khurshid Kasuri. Welcome to NDTV, sir.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you on our show. In India, as journalists, we often do this rough-hand assessments of things. We ask even our Prime Minister sometimes to give himself marks out of 10 to get some sort of sense of how people are actually internally assessing something. So if I had to ask you, in your estimation, to rate out of 10 where this peace process stands today, what sort of score would you give it?
At least 5.
That's not bad.
At least 5.
And that's a half empty glass or a half full glass?
It's, I think, a half full glass because it was completely empty first. So that means it's going up.
Now, at this point, one of the things that Delhi is watching very keenly, and something that almost brought a hint of hostility back between New Delhi and Islamabad, is, of course, the visit by the Hurriyat leaders. Do you believe that Islamabad may have touched a raw nerve somewhere? And you made comments talking about India's stubbornness on this whole issue of the Hurriyat travelling to the rest of Pakistan. Do you believe that this is a point of possible conflict?
No, I don't think it's really a point of possible conflict. I understand the problems the government of India faces, but they should understand the problems we face. Both governments have to carry their public opinion with them. We can't do it without that. The Kashmir issue is far too complex. And frankly, we've done nothing revolutionary on the issue of the Hurriyat. Because when President Musharraf spoke to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, both in New York as well as in Delhi, they didn't hide the fact that there were going to be purposeful talks for the purpose of ultimately having a negotiated settlement now. A final settlement is the word.
May I just interrupt to give you the formulation of how New Delhi views this whole Hurriyat visit? Their argument simply is that when there was an agreement on the bus, the understanding that Pakistan, in fact, insisted on was that this would be a Kashmir-specific travel. So therefore, to ask the Hurriyat leaders to travel beyond what we call POK and you call Azad Kashmir was in some ways violative of your own agreement, your own insistence on it being a Kashmir-specific proposal.
I can understand Indian point of view, but I would like to make a very obvious distinction. These are people who are not regular travelers, not divided families. They are coming for the purpose of carrying the peace process forward. India is interested in that. I'm sure they are. Now, when we were in Delhi, we discussed this with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. And I remember even earlier when I went to see Prime Minister, he asked me a direct question in his office in Delhi. He said, Mr. Kasuri, you will be seeing the Kashmiri leaders in Delhi. Is it all right if we see your Kashmiri leaders? And I know my response. I said, sir, not only the President and Prime Minister of Azad Kashmir, but you please also meet with leader of the opposition in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. And we don't mind him traveling to, them traveling to Delhi.
So you would not have a problem if a similar delegation, some of which may have problems with your government in Islamabad, travel to Delhi to
I said
our
opposition. For this reason, I said leader of the opposition. That belongs to People's Party in the government in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Because this cannot be owned by a political party. And coming back to the Hurriyat, the question you asked me, so I do not believe that you can have an Israeli settlement without the Palestinians. You cannot, however much you may wish, have a Kashmiri settlement without the Kashmiris. Now,
but there are many groups of Kashmiris.
Yes, there are many groups of Kashmiris. I'm not denying that. There are even differences within the Hurriyat, unfortunately.
Yes.
We wish that were not the case. We means Pakistanis.
May I ask you just a corollary to that? Earlier, there were leaders whom India believes to be the elected representatives in Jammu and Kashmir, whom you do not see in that view, but they are members of our parliament. For example, Mehbooba Mufti, Omar Abdullah. They had expressed a desire to travel on the Srinagar-Muzaffarabad bus, and they were not given the go-ahead for that. In fact, the SAARC Charter should permit them to be able to travel to Pakistan without any problem. When you do talk about shades of Kashmiri opinion, the Hurriyat certainly is one key component. Do you believe that the time has come for Islamabad to also give some sort of space in this whole dialogue process to what Delhi believes are the genuine representatives of Kashmir?
You know, the point about representativeness is a very tricky issue, but I still take your point.
Yes.
My response is that let's walk before we run. Now, you don't want to do things that are going to create disequilibrium, as it were. So this is the first step.
Isn't some disequilibrium essential? I mean, the Hurriyat visit here has created some disequilibrium, for example, in Delhi. But Delhi has, despite the noises, looked the other way and allowed the visit to happen. So tomorrow, if some members of parliament from our side of Kashmir want to come and meet you, if Mehbooba Mufti wants to meet Mr. Khurshid Kasuri, are you game, sir?
That's what I said. Let's walk before we run. The purpose is not meeting somebody or meeting somebody. The purpose is advancing this process forward. And as long as we are, when you talk of compromises, and you said that India was rattled is not the word, you use some
trepidation.
of the, yes, use some of the word.
Or discomforted.
Discomforted, okay. Don't you think that President Musharraf was discomforted by the sort of editorials by some newspapers that have been written against him, that have been written against me, that have been written against the Prime Minister, for what we are being accused of, taking a U-turn, which is not the case at all. So you can't really say that, you know, discomfort is on the Indian government side.
No,
there's a lot
of
of discomfort on our side also.
I completely concede that certainly President Musharraf, yourself, your government takes decisions under a lot of pressure. But I know that back home, this question will be asked. So I want to ask you this question, that when you say let's walk before we run, are you saying that at this juncture, big move that the Hurriyat is here, let's not rock the boat when it comes to leaders like Mehbooba or Omar Abdullah later? Let's deal with that later. Would that be fair?
All I said, I will repeat what I said. Let's walk before we run.
Right, so let's come back to the Hurriyat then. Yeah. It's Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani does not come here. He's the one leader who's believed to have the greatest influence with what we call militant groups, what you call the Mujahideen groups. Groups like the Hizbul Mujahideen say a truncated Hurriyat delegation is of no use. We do not want to meet them. How much of a setback has this been to what Islamabad had hoped to achieve from this visit?
No, I won't hide it. We are disappointed, but we will try. I mean, as Foreign Minister, I could have said, no, it doesn't matter, or he's sick or whatever. No, we are disappointed. We want the Hurriyat to be united. Why? Because we think Hurriyat can play a major role in a resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir issue. And if they are united, it will be much easier for both the governments.
Many had hoped that what would spring from this visit is some sort of brokering of an internal ceasefire where perhaps militant groups would come up as they have before with a readiness for the ceasefire that the Indian army could then respond in kind to. Do you believe that the stage is ready for that right now?
The President, again, as usual, President Musharraf, has shown a lot of courage. I think almost a year ago, he said he was prepared to use his influence. Some people accused him of admitting that Pakistan was fomenting trouble in Kashmir. What the President said, and I would like to repeat as Foreign Minister, we have goodwill with the people of Kashmir because we are the only state in the world which has espoused their cause. We are prepared to use that influence. Give us the space. And I think with the visit of the Hurriyat, and if we find, for example, that the human rights situation is improving in Kashmir, demilitarization is very important in that connection, the space available to President Musharraf will increase. He is a courageous enough leader to use his influence. He cannot direct, he cannot dictate. People say, oh, it's like this. There have been attempts on his life. And when people say, you know, I won't name who said, you know who said, one major attack can upset the whole thing. 2 Indian prime ministers have been assassinated. There have been 2 attacks on President Musharraf. There have been an attack on Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz. Despite the best of efforts by the security forces, something can go wrong. We have to create that trust between the 2 countries so that, God forbid, if there is an incident, the whole process is not so fragile that it gets unraveled.
So would your government use its influence with people like Syed Salahuddin, with other groups of the United Jihad Council, to at least meet the Hurriyat, the delegation that's visited?
I can't go into details, but what I'm saying is President Musharraf went on record, so I'm not disclosing a state secret, that Pakistan is prepared to use its influence. And we will do whatever is required to resolve it. That was 1 year
ago. A lot has improved since then. Has the time come to broker an internal ceasefire?
Well, if it was the case 1 year ago, and you rightly say things have improved, it would mean the President's determination has, let's say, further strengthened. By the way, I've asked a lot of Western leaders, top Western leaders in my private conversations. I said, supposing Pakistan forgets about Kashmir, there's a very dangerous territory that I'm now treading on. Will there be a durable peace between Pakistan and India? Not one, believe me, has said to me there will be peace. They said, no, you need to carry the people of Kashmir. That is the only way there will be durable peace. Because what has been the cause of conflict? It is Kashmir.